Greetings and salutations, Internet netizens. It is I, Wolfphototech, and here we are with another delightful video. This time it is the Critical Hit deck for Starfinder First Edition. Sometime in late 2024 or 2025, there will most likely be released Starfinder Second Edition, but it's not hard and fast confirmed at this point. There is a total of 53 cards in this deck. These decks for Starfinder have different levels of necessity. Some decks are highly important, particularly even to new players and game masters of Starfinder, like the rules reference books decks or mechanics decks, or even the Alien Archives decks are highly important and highly useful for new game masters and even experienced game masters. And then there is other decks that are super low value that you don't really need to buy at all, unless you have no imagination or whatsoever and you need something that guides you along a process of creating something. And then there's decks in the middle category. And this, I feel, is like the middle category. Every one of these decks, by the way, from Paizo has either the Orc license card or the OGL card. This is an OGL system. This is an OGL card. Each one of these decks also have a rules and instructions and rules card. This deck is an optional item. This is the middle category. The first category is you really should consider buying these. These will make everything way easier to play the game. And then the second and third category is optional stuff. And then second category is the useful, good, the really good, cool stuff. And then the third category is like, you really need that kind of thing. These cards are to be drawn or handed out depending on the variation of special variant rules you want to run them by. You can either have them sit on the table, all shuffled and everything, and have players pull them whenever they get a critical hit and run it that way, or you could hand them out to each player, deal them up like poker, and hand them out 2 or 3 cards at a time. And when they go for a critical hit, they can pick up one of their cards and either blindside rule or play it like a trading card game kind of variant, where they gain an extra effect on their critical hit. Now, this is the critical hit deck. This gives your character an extra bit of power in play that allows them to do extra effects on top of their critical hits. This is not a default mechanic for Starfinder, and the same thing applies to the Pathfinder versions of this deck. So this is not necessary to buy this deck, and nor is it a default mechanic that's already built into the system. So keep that in mind. This is entirely optional. And as I said before, there's the player use variant on the rules and the GM use variant, as well as other options on the back. So this is essentially sanctioned homebrew from Paizo to you. So if your players need a little extra power, this deck will help you out, giving them a little extra power in the game and a little extra thematic effect on top of their critical hits. There's also another deck, the Fumble deck, which makes the game harder. You can either use just the critical hit deck, or just the Fumble deck, or both at the same time. Uh, I have not used these cards in any Starfinder game, so I cannot state my rating for them. However, you do have a nice variety of effects depending on the type of damage that your character is using, such as wearing waves, energy, kinetic, spell, and extreme blow. Basically explosive, and it's denoted right there. So when you draw one of these cards or use them, if you are using an energy weapon, you would use the energy effect. The crit effect for this card, Wearing Waves, is the target is fatigued. If it was a kinetic projectile effect, the target is staggered for 1d3 rounds. So that is one of the little important details that all game masters have to remember. If you are going to use these cards, these are going to make your players more powerful. If you use these cards, it's going to make them weaker. You can either use it just with the players and not on your monsters. You can just use them on your monsters and not on the players, or you can use them across the two. The preferable option that most players are going to give you is they would like the critical hit deck for their characters and not the critical fumble deck for their characters, but the critical fumble deck for their enemies, not the critical deck. So if you're going to use both decks, you have to keep that in mind, that your players might want to have specific curtailing of certain decks when it comes to affecting them, and the certain decks affecting their opponents. So there you go. Personally, I feel that it's hard to give a score to these decks for the critical hit deck as well as the critical fumble deck. It kind of will affect the overall effectiveness of your characters that have access to it. So there you go. Keep that in mind. If you are using the critical fumble deck, it's going to make your characters weaker. If you're using the critical hit deck, they're going to be stronger. So balance to that. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time. Ciao.